What's going on, guys? It's Pastor Cody, and I want to jump right in, okay, and ask you this question. Have you ever heard the term opposites attract? The idea is that we're most drawn to people that are different than us, people who have different personalities and different interests. Right? If you're quiet or shy or introverted, you'll probably be drawn to someone that's more outgoing or life of the party, that kind of personality. Or if you love sports like me, you'll be drawn to a creative artist. But I've got some breaking news. You ready? This theory doesn't exactly play out in real life. Almost all of us are more likely to spend time with people who are more like us, not less like us. We connect better with people who have similar personalities or similar interests or similar ideas. We not only gravitate towards people like ourselves, we intentionally move away from people who are different. We like people who see the world as we do. It's what we have in common, not our differences, that seem to make for great relationships. Some people might even say that the more you have in common, the stronger the relationship will be. That's because having things in common often leads to connection, and it allows for us to feel even more comfortable. But here's the one big problem with this, okay? We're surrounded by people who are nothing like us. In our schools, in our neighborhoods, in our sports teams, on social media, at church, in our family, the environments that you're in, both physically and digitally, are full of people who are completely different than you. These people have different thoughts. These people have different perspectives. These people have different ideas about the way that things should be done and the way that life should be lived. If you look around, or if you spend a few minutes on social media or listening to the news or listening to our world and how it feels more divided than it ever has, people can put their opinion out about anything. You might see or hear or read about people that are giving their opinion on things like who's the best sports teams? Go Warriors. Hey-o, they're the best. It's just hands down. That's what it is. Dynasty, Steph Curry. Or they might hear whether or not you should date in high school. There's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of opinions on how much homework you should have or the best fast food chain. Shout out to In-N-Out. It's just the best. Those are some fun ones, but we all know it gets a little bit more serious. When it comes to hot topics, people can get pretty heated, right? Everywhere we look, there's some sort of differing thought and opinion. In a polarized world, unity can feel impossible. There are too many opinions and too many divisions. So is unity even possible? Is it that we need to strive for better unity? And is there anything that we can do to make a difference? I want to talk about that. Last week, we looked at how Jesus used the tradition of the Passover meal to help his followers remember all that he had done for them. Many now call this the Last Supper or the Last Dinner if you're from Florida, because this is the last time that Jesus had dinner with his disciples before he was crucified. After Jesus and the disciples finished the meal, they were in the Garden of Gethsemane, a place where you can still visit in Israel. It's pretty cool. I've never been there, but seen pictures, where Jesus spent a lot of time praying, okay? This is Garden of Gethsemane. Think about this for a minute, okay? If you could just pray for anything right now, what would it be? Currently, my prayers would probably just bounce back and forth between having more money and getting new shoes, okay? I guess that's really just two prayers in one, but some of you might have a little bit more, less shallow prayers than I have, but maybe you might pray for a family member to be healed or a relationship to be fixed. But if you were to pray a final prayer near the end of your life, what would you pray for? If you had to pray for one thing before you go, what would it be? That's a tough question to answer, isn't it? My guess is that what you'd be praying for right now isn't the same thing that you'd be praying for at the end of your life. Why? Because when it's the end, there's a greater sense of urgency. Because time is short. Our words matter more. At the end of our lives, we probably wouldn't pray for a new car or for more followers or pray for someone to go out with me or to like me, or we wouldn't pray for our geometry tests. The stakes would be so much higher, so much greater. Our prayer would be for what's most important. Wouldn't it be fascinating to know what Jesus prayed for in a moment like that? Thankfully, we can. John, one of our friends, he records it in John 17, verse 20. He says, this is what it says. I'm praying not only for these disciples, but also for all who will ever believe in me through their message. Jesus prays for his disciples and all who will ever believe. That's people like us. In his last moments, Jesus prayed for those who would follow him personally. That blows my mind. But look at what he prays for. It goes on, it says, I am praying not only for these disciples, but also for all who will ever believe in me through their message. I pray that they will all be one. Just as you and I are one. As you are in me, Father, and I am in you. And may they be in us so that the world will believe you sent me. I have given them the glory you gave me so they may be one as we are one. I am in them and you are in me. May they experience such perfect unity that the world will know that you sent me and that you love them as much as you love me. Jesus prayed for his disciples and anyone who would choose to follow him to be one. In a final prayer, he prayed for his followers to be unified. He didn't pray for strength for the church. He didn't pray for money for the church or even courage for the church. He didn't pray for us to be right about everything or to win arguments or to win debates with people who have different opinions than us at our school. He prayed for us to be united. Being united means to be for each other, to work with each other, to encourage each other, and fight for each other, and pray for each other, no matter how different we are. Why is that kind of unity such a big deal? Just like disunity can derail a team or a group or a family, it can also derail the church. Over time, the church got a lot bigger, so imagine how many more opportunities there were for disagreements. We all know the difference can create difficulties. Things like arguing or gossiping, things that can destroy a group, things that can make a group unattractive. No one wants to be part of a group known for frustration or known for arguments or division, but I think it's even more than that. Think about it this way. Unity doesn't mean that we agree on everything all the time, right? Differences and diversity actually make us stronger. But unity does mean that we seek to keep moving forward and together. It means that we keep our focus on what matters most, even while we're still working out the rest, right? For this picture, for example, it's a picture of amped up fans at a huge event like soccer, basketball, football, the Warriors, the unified fan base. They're the best. You can see the unity, right? Wearing the same colors, experiencing the highs and the lows of the game together. Go Dubs, they're the best. Or you maybe even think about like a concert. I mean, look at these guys. Hands in the air, shouting out the lyrics together. That's like the best feeling in the world. If you've ever been to a concert, I love concerts, man. A ton of strangers, but unified by the music. On the other hand, think about those situations where everyone is clawing and competing, doing whatever it takes to get ahead. I mean, look at this guy, right? or another picture of disunity we see all the time when people just aren't bought in, right? No one shows up, and the few who do don't seem all that into it. When it comes to a crowd that is cheering and celebrating together or clawing and competing, when it comes to a room full of people enjoying the event or singing the songs together, or they're bored and they're unengaged, which seems more fun? Which seems like the more likely to attract more fans? Look at something that Jesus said just one more time in John chapter 17. This is what he says. He says, may they experience such perfect unity that the world will know that you sent me and that you love them as much as you love me. Jesus is saying that the way that we treat each other will affect what people believe about him. Our unity will make Jesus' message more believable, and our disunity will potentially do the opposite. Unity doesn't mean that we agree on everything all the time. Differences and diversity makes us stronger, but unity does mean that we keep moving forward together. It means we keep our focus on what matters most, even while we're still working out the rest. That's a huge responsibility for those of us who follow Jesus. It's a huge responsibility because we all have people that we care about. We all have people that we go to school with. We all have people in our teams or people in our family who just don't know Jesus. And our unity or our disunity can affect not only whether they come to church, but also what they believe about God. When you think about it that way, unity becomes a much bigger deal. It becomes a bigger deal in how we love and treat one another. Our unity becomes a way for the world to see God. So, how do we become more unified? Especially when we tend to focus more on our differences than our similarities. Maybe it feels impossible. The world and even the church are just too divided and polarized, right? There's never going to be unified. It feels too big to tackle. But as we see from Jesus' prayer, our job as followers of Jesus is to learn how to embrace our differences and stay unified in the biggest thing that matters. What is that? It's our love for Jesus. If we have that in common, all the other differences don't have to cause disunity. And guess whose responsibility it is to promote and protect the unity of the group? Is it the person next to you? No, it's not. It's yours. It's mine. We are responsible for our own contribution to the unity of the church. This is good because that gives us a lot of responsibility. You can't help what everybody else will do. You can only help what you do. The reality is, unity begins with you. It begins with your relationship with the people in your small group. It begins with the way that you treat people at church and at school. It begins in how you talk about people from our church. It begins with how you treat people from other churches. It begins with how you react when someone who follows Jesus frustrates you. And it begins when you realize that you're not exempt from Jesus' prayer for unity. Oftentimes, for unity to work and to get the attention of those around you, you will have to make the first move. You're going to have to be the first one to say hi. You're going to have to be the first one to sit down by a different person. Or you're going to have to be the first one to welcome that new person. And this is difficult because we always want someone else to make the first move. But the reality is when it begins with us. So much is riding on this. I think that's why Jesus prayed for it near the end of his life. He knew how difficult it would be. He knew that we'd all have a million excuses why we shouldn't love and treat each other well. He knew that our tendency would always be to let our differences divide us. But if we're going to accomplish the mission that Jesus gave us, we must have unity. Listen, soon after Jesus left earth, the church started changing the world. Like, big time. No one had ever seen people who were so different stand together. It was a diverse and different group of people worshiping together and taking care of one another. They had never seen a group so committed to working together to take care of those around them. The unity of the early church changed. This unity from the first early church allowed the message of Jesus to change the world. Imagine if it could also change your school. Imagine if it could change your family. Imagine if it could change our city. How could you today work towards unity? How could you pursue unity this week with your small group? Who could you forgive, okay? Who could you celebrate? Who could you spend time with that may be a little bit different than you? Remember, this isn't just a nice thing to do, but in fact, unity is essential to accomplishing any goal. And unity has to come from a genuine place. Jesus wanted us to make sure that before he left, his disciples knew that it was vital for the church to influence and change the world. That's why it's so important to remember that unity begins with you.